Welcome to BWI Live here on Tuesday. I'm Thomas Frankar. It's a bye week, and just like Penn State football last week, we're going to be playing down a man on today's show. But don't worry, we still have an elite group. Nate Bauer, senior editor for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, is with us to talk about all things Penn State football this week. A surprisingly needed bye week in week 3 of the college football season. Nate, welcome to the show. Anything off the top for you want to get to before we get into today's topics?
No, but it is, a good time, I would say. I mean, geez, Fitz has got stuff going on. My wife is sick. The Penn State football team is
something
physically under the weather.
Yeah.
It's an active time. So yeah, let's get right into it.
Yeah, so of course, we're going to be getting to your thoughts and questions here on the BWI Live Show on Tuesday, the BWI Mailbag at the end of the show. So if you got any thoughts or comments, you can put them in there. We'll respond to you throughout the show. We have a lot of comments and a lot of questions from the Blue White Illustrated message board, which is always a good time to hit you with this. If you want to join Blue White Illustrated, there's never a bad time, but we're trying to give you the best possible opportunity, and that is with code PSU1 for our podcast and YouTube audience. You pay $1 American dollar. And you get an infinite amount of information, probably more information than you can digest within a college football season. 2 months of Blue White Illustrated premium content for just $1. Code PSU1. A lot of that information coming to you tonight, Nate Bauer. You and I will be at practice tonight. So what are you looking for in a bye week? Can you tell fans what to expect, what's different from practice, from what we normally see and bring them, and what we might expect tonight?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think anything will be on tap for tonight that's different. Maybe the second bye week will be more different, right? Sometimes they have a developmental scrimmage that, if I recall correctly, we can see 10 minutes of, 15 minutes of, and that's down the depth chart, players, the third, fourth string kind of guys. So I would very much, I don't know, to be honest with you, I haven't had one of these. I don't know if you have, but I cannot recall in my career covering a Penn State team that had a bye effectively the third week of the season. So, we'll see how they handle it and, get a good idea of some of the bumps and bruises that have afflicted this team over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and that's going to be something we have to follow tonight at practice and also throughout the season. It's been a very interesting start to the year from now both sides of the football. We'll get to that a little bit later in the Bowling Green breakdown, and this is how it's going to go today. We're going to talk about the bye week to-do list. What does the team need to do this week? And of course, that is going to bleed into our Bowling Green game review, and what we saw from that game, how we think that game played out, and of course, then the mailbag at the end of the show. But before we get to that, Nate, how was your weekend? Was it ruined by a line at Anti-Fragile?
Oh my goodness, was it? No,
did we do it?
No, yes and no. It's funny. Is this where I'm honest or not? Let me think. Yep, I'm going to be honest. I had a Friday afternoon tea time, and so I played some golf on Friday afternoon. But interestingly, on Saturday, a friend of mine in the press box came in and said, Nate, I was at Anti-Fragile yesterday afternoon, stopped in to get a 6-pack or a 4-pack of their cans. And you would not believe, but so many people told the bartender that they had stopped by to see you, to see you and Fitz. And,
yes!
And I know.
We did
it. Yeah, well, we did. And then I immediately botched it by not being there. So in any case, Anti-Fragile is awesome. We love them. Great beer and kombucha offerings, obviously, with John's, which is their cheesesteak stand outside. It's just the best atmosphere, the best people, the best place to go on a Friday afternoon, Saturday game day. It doesn't matter. They've got a huge projector to watch games. You name it. It is, really like how do I put this in a way that is it is the best place for an adult to go enjoy a beverage in
Yeah,
State College,
you're not
Pennsylvania.
you're
Like,
not getting a picture of something. You're getting actual like adult-sized portions.
yeah, the you're not having drinks with the rail, right? Like the Joaquins, right? The different schnapps that are out there. This is actual good beer that is brewed locally. It's actually brewed on site. You know this. You've been through it.
Yeah.
No, I'm mentioning here they have a new IPA coming this weekend, hazy IPA. Electric Atmosphere is going to be on draft and in kegs. Death by Mango with Warwick Farm. There's collaborations that they do, and all of that stuff is going to be there this weekend. So be sure if you are in town, honestly, anytime to stop and give them a look.
Appreciate Anti-Fragile for being a sponsor here on the BWI Live Show. As always, if you do go, tell them we sent you and say what's up to all the people there. And if you see Nate, give him a hard time. Actually, no, be nice to Nate. Be nice to Nate if you see him in public. Nate,
I don't know. It's a rough world out there.
Let's get to what we promised, the bye week to-do list. Penn State gets an extra week off in the regular season. They'll have another bye week later, I believe in October. So what is on top of your mind of what the team needs to accomplish today? Really this week from whatever perspective you think is important.
Yeah, that's a great question. To me, some of the bumps and bruises stand out. And I think that it's what has happened over the last week, some of the stuff in maybe the West Virginia game or some of the things that might have happened in the Bowling Green game. Yes, but just in general, I think there were, and obviously James Franklin said that this wasn't the case, but I do think they were banged up a little bit before the season even started.
Yeah.
Right. Just getting through training camp. He talked about, he didn't name names, but clearly Caden Saunders and Liam Clifford had some absences through the preseason camp that have shown up in their play and
or literally not shown up because they haven't been on the field.
Yeah. And look, we'll get to this later, but that's a big deal. Khalil Dinkins had a very important catch on Saturday that ended up being a critical first down for Penn State. Getting guys like that, guys who have been on the mend, back and up to full speed. I just I don't have a ton of the things that they worked on, right? This is showtime. The dress rehearsals are over. So you're not going to do major construction on the offense or the defense. This is what you got, right? These are the guys that you're going to do it with. So you need to get the guys that you're going to do it with in as best shape as you possibly can going into this part of the schedule.
One of the surprise situations was Andrew Rappleyea not playing on Saturday, and he was I don't want to say a game time out, but we found out at game time, at least that was announced at game time, that he was out. What did you observe of that situation when you were at the stadium on Saturday? Did you get a good look? What did you notice about that particular injury or bumps and bruises? I don't even know how to phrase it because I haven't seen or heard of Andrew, since Wednesday when he was totally fine last week.
Yep. So again, this is where I'm choosing to be honest. I saw nothing. I did not have my binoculars and was not looking for him. Okay. But Sean Fitz did. And I was sitting right next to Sean and he said that he was on crutches. Right. So, being on crutches.
Not a great sign.
Not great. Not great. James Franklin was asked about it, obviously, in his post game. And he just said that he was asked specifically if it was a prolonged injury or not. Yeah. And Franklin had all of the wording of it's too early to tell, essentially, which is fair right? You got to go through that process to see what the injury is and how long the prognosis is to get back from it. And then two, what he said, and this is you know, we do the reading between the lines here thing, but when he includes as part of the conversation, I need to talk to the family and the player and make sure that everybody's all on the same page. Yeah, that's a precursor to being out for a while. So
Yeah.
I am not hopeful on his behalf
Right.
for this season, but you know, things can change and you never really know. So we'll certainly, that will certainly be a question that comes up to James Franklin tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. And health in general, I'd say kind of, the precursor of our conversation about later in the game or later in the show. I don't think KJ Winston was healthy going into the game. Watching him on that first series, he did not look like the same athlete. Now that's just an observation. That is not me reporting anything, but watching Winston run and then watching him run in that game were different experiences. So the health of the defense with Tony Rojas going in and out of the game as well. Yep. And then the offense, I'm not convinced that either Caden Saunders nor Liam Clifford were healthy in that game. Liam Clifford has been playing, but I don't know that he's been available really to target in these situations. So health is the number one thing. Surprisingly, like in the first 2 weeks of this season, this is a bye week for a good reason on that side. The other thing from the game that I think is interesting is how much can you get done at this point of getting a fourth safety ready? Because without Winston, it changed a lot of what they could do, and it had a knock-on effect to their run defense and some of their coverage packages. And not having a fourth safety that you want to insert into the lineup was a bit of an issue. So is this something they can do this week, or is that just a long-term project that's going to happen when it happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting them as ready as you possibly can. But one of the things that stood out and that I kind of gleaned through the spring is the drop off from those first three safeties to the next three safeties, or certainly the fourth, the fifth, and eventually sixth, is how important the communication aspect of all of that position entails, right? I mean, they're getting guys in the right place. And I know that there were some comments during the game and after the game on Saturday about Jalen Reed and some of the frantic looking to the sideline stuff, right? About everybody getting on the same page. I think that when you miss a piece of that puzzle among those three safeties, it throws things off. It puts them in a not a great place. And really, you saw it. It's not about the fourth safety. It's that you have to change the defense. It's that a third cornerback comes in, right? The drop off between 3 and 4 at safety. If you lose one of those top three safeties, the onus then shifts to, in this case, I believe Cam Miller, right? So that's something that I mean, if anything, the contingency plan of, hey, getting that side of the defense up to speed to approximate what you're doing when everybody is healthy as best as possible. I guess that's an important part of this week, but I think the notion that you're going to take Lane and, hey, you're not going to miss
one for one replace. Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's really the issue that they're going to face with this. And I go back again to, I have no idea, even though I know exactly why K-Mac transferred. This is the exact situation we talked about in May of, why would you leave a defense that wants to play three safeties? What? And I'm not trying to like beat this over the head, because we understand like you make decisions for your family, but good play is followed by NIL typically in places. So I guess I don't know, not to get into that again. That was a bewildering thing heading into the summer. And here we are. The concept, I guess the point is, this is the ramifications of attrition in the depth of the transfer portal era and all those things. So you have tackling in here along with your defensive communication. Is this a 2-week problem, or is this something you just saw this past week against Bowling Green?
I mean, you tell me. I think I listened to what you had to say, and it seemed like something that through the course of the game was problematic, but I'm not sure that it was against West Virginia. So it seems like an opponent-specific performance.
I think it ties right into the health of the safeties, because you lose KJ Winston, who I think has missed 1 tackle in 3 years. Like, he's just a machine.
Yeah.
And when you then the knock-on effect of that, the cascading effect is now Jalen Reed has to move back to safety, and you put Cam Miller on the field. So not only do you not have a 200-pound athlete at that field position, you're losing your best defender from a run aspect, and now you cannot add numbers to the box the same way from a physicality perspective. So you are putting, and then you throw in the fact that Dom DeLuca is out there because Tony Rojas was injured. Tony has missed a couple tackles himself. In fact, the play he got injured on, he missed that tackle. And it wasn't him throwing a shoulder. He just came in high, and the dude hit him in the chest, as far as I could tell. So tackling in the beginning of in this particular game, I think, is more about personnel than it is about the overall, like, a systemic problem with the front seven. They weren't good in the first half, but they did get better as the game went on. Good. Yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to throw you nothing back at that. So let's do this. Let's move on then to the good stuff. Like we've talked about, the injuries, the health, the tackling, defense, blah, blah, blah. But there are good things that happened so far. What do you think the strengths of this team are through the first 2 weeks that you've seen?
Hang on. I immediately want to throw this off course and make everybody mad. Did Bowling Green offensively not play well in the first half of that game? Am I imagining that their quarterback made good throws and had targets that helped him out making contested catches?
Yes, I wouldn't say they were all contested, but yes, well, no, that's a good point. You got those back shoulder balls early in the game that were very good. I actually broke down why it felt like they were so efficient in the first half and why they weren't as efficient in the second half over on the Blue White Illustrated message board. Almost every single play in the game I broke down on Saturday and Sunday. Code PSU1, 2 months for $1 to get all of that in-depth information. But you to further your point, yes, they were playing well on offense in the first half. They have a 6-year quarterback.
Yeah, that helps. That's good. And and I think even for him, he had a good day until things fell right. I mean, it almost turned into attrition by the fourth quarter, and that's where you saw Penn State take advantage of that, right?
Yeah.
I think Bowling Green's head coach after the game said that they ran out of bullets, and it appeared to me that certainly that was the case late, where Penn State had remaining bullets and took advantage of that.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole thing, Nate. So Penn State came out in the first 6 quarters of the season and said, we're playing this on defense. We're playing this style of defense. And they didn't really deviate from that other than a handful of plays, maybe on third down, getting their third down defense onto the field. And then finally, they saw a quarterback that could take advantage of it. In the first half, you gave Connor Bazelak a picture that he understood, and he was expecting pre-snap on virtually every single play. And so they were able to identify the routes and the concepts they needed and attack those. In the second half, Penn State finally adjusted and played their third or fourth coverage of the season. And then as soon as the picture changed, you found out Connor Bazelak is not a quarterback that can process after the snap. And so the offense fell apart. There's a lot of other things that went into it, but that's a big conversation in this game of what did Penn State change? Not a whole lot, but what they did change had a massive effect on Bowling Green that allowed just 89 yards and 3 points in the second half. So there was some, I think, budging from the Penn State defensive staff off of the mark of we're only playing man coverage this season. And then, give credit to Bowling Green for putting them in that spot where they had to do that.
Yeah. Forcing them out of it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to set you up. I think we're both impressed and I think optimistic about the offense though. From the perspective of things that seem to be clicking there.
Yeah, I think and I just wrote about it last night. It will be on the site probably this afternoon, maybe tomorrow, that the entire conversation this offseason boiled down to explosive plays, right? That's why James Franklin, the first thing that he brings up when he talks about Andy Kolodnicki is that they didn't have explosive plays last year, right? It's not like anybody forgot, but I do think it's relevant to bring it up that, yes, for the first 10 weeks of the season, they had they did not meet their explosive play goals basically all the time, right?
Yeah, so except for the first game.
Except for the first game. But they want 15% of their offensive plays run to be explosive. And they were not doing that last season. Made a change from Mike Yurcich to obviously Andy Kolodnicki, because Andy Kolodnicki's Kansas offense, with presumably less dynamic players and fewer of them, created one of the most explosive offenses in college football last year. So
and a rotating cavalcade of quarterbacks. Through multiple styles, they were able to do it.
Yep. So give him better pieces and see what happens. Well, what has happened? Penn State has had quite a few. They've exceeded that 15% by quite a bit. They've had 30 explosive plays, I believe is the number, out of 117 plays run over 2 games. They have scored, I believe, I just ran the numbers last night. I believe it is 7 of the 9 touchdowns that they've scored in total this season have been on explosive plays. Katron, Trey Wallace, Amari Evans, Tyler Warren, Nick Singleton, right? Like, the stars of Penn State's offense are being that. And like, I'm going to wink this, but last year Penn State had some stars that weren't that. And because of that, they struggled offensively. So this is, people, I understand the conversation, and I think that we're going to have it, of why aren't more players involved? Why, right? Where's Julian Fleming? Where's Liam Clifford? Where's Caden Saunders? Where's right? I mean, you name it. Certainly the Rapplier stuff changes things a little bit, but Luke Reynolds. Well, the answer to this, and this is something that Katron Allen said afterwards, and it was kind of, again, like a little bit of a wink, is they are making a concerted effort offensively, meaning Andy Kolodnicki, to get the best players that make the most plays the ball. All the time.
And to also, I think, intelligently attack defenses based on what they're presented with, and not necessarily we're running a play to get X the football. We're not going to force feed anybody the football. We're going to go where the target should go. And that's from the quarterback decision-making and from the offensive schematic decision-making. I'll get into more of that. And this will be the last thing here on our kind of general overview of the first 2 games. Defensive line, we already in the chat, Abdul Carter's a useless defensive end, has been established.
Whoa.
And it is now in the constitution of Penn State football fandom that he is terrible and everyone hates it. So what do you think? Is the defensive line pressure, is that an issue to you?
Is it an issue? Yes and no. Again, this is eye test stuff, and I think it's backed by real world stats, but I think that Bowling Green was trying to get the ball out pretty fast offensively. I think, I just feel like I'm in a little bit of a deja vu where wasn't this the exact same thing that happened last year with Chop Robinson? He didn't have a ton of sacks.
He only got 4 sacks, and everyone was like, the bum, right? Even though he got constant pressure. I'd say the difference is the style of the defense made it so you couldn't not, like, it was impossible for them to not get pressure. The way they played defense and some of the defensive fronts and some of the, the pressure packages, as opposed to Tom Allen's more conventional. This is what we talked about. We try to prepare fans for this. This is not Brent Pry's defense, but this is more towards a conventional defense than it is Manny Diaz's frenetic, constant pressure, dictating the flow of the game forcibly, good or bad. It's going to be defined in an area where the defense is prepared for it to be defined. Unless you face, really, really good teams that can change that math, and you can't do some of those things. So let's transition this conversation into specifics about Penn State versus Bowling Green and what we saw on the field. We talked a little bit about the defensive performance by half as far as what happened from a scheme perspective. And again, the deep dive on that, bluewhiteillustrated.com. I spent 2 days, three days looking at that film and writing about it. The TLDR version was over 1,000 words for both the offense and the defense. So if you got a lot of time, go check that out. I want your thoughts on the defense and the defensive line. Because James Franklin talked about getting Bowling Green in less and being more efficient on first down is the way he said it. Yep. What did you see from the front seven in terms of first versus second half performance?
I think that certainly they clamped down on the run better in the second half and really forced more. They went back to the formula that I'm pretty sure is everyone's formula. Yeah,
just keep going. I'm just throwing that up there because I had to laugh at that.
Well, but I have a divergent conversation about this.
Sure.
And I want to be respectful to Tom Allen. Isn't this what everybody expected? To a certain, am I wrong in pegging Manny Diaz as being in rarefied air nationally as a defensive coordinator?
He wasn't until he got to Penn State. Everyone liked Manny Diaz's stuff, but it's not like it worked great at Miami. It didn't work to the level that it did at Penn State.
But it worked.
And I think that's what we got to understand is these things are also talent driven, and Chop Robinson is a difference maker at defensive end. That loss is specific.
When you say that it didn't work at Miami the same way, though, are you talking about when he was the head coach there or when he was the defensive coordinator?
When he was the head coach. Yeah.
Well, and that's my point. That's my point is the reason he got that job was because his defenses at Miami were really good.
Yes, that's true.
He's a really good defensive coordinator. I do think that there is a reality of Tom Allen having a little bit of a learning curve at work right now, moving back into exclusively the defensive coordinator's chair. But I also don't think this is where my broad view and your specific view are I want to meld them because my broad view is there was no way that they were going to continue to do the things that they did last year, this year. It wasn't going to happen. And I think that I said that most of the offseason.
Yes.
Right?
Stylistically. They were never, they shouldn't be doing what they did last year because that's James Franklin saying, just do what Manny did. Just be Manny. And so the whole conversation this offseason was we want to retain as much of the good stuff as possible, but make it your own and be your own man, be your own coordinator. You have big shoes to fill, but we think you can do that in your own way. And Nate, I have a question of whether or not they're actually doing that right now. From a schematic perspective, the defense they're rolling out is not even Manny Diaz. It's closer to Wink Martindale or Dom Brown in terms of the amount of man coverage they're playing. The amount of cover 3, cover 1, which is the cousin family of man and zone within the same kind of, we're going to play a lot of man coverage and we're not. When we're not, we're playing one other coverage. And I'm overemphasizing that. It's not like they're just playing those two styles of defense, but it's way more than even Manny Diaz played that, even in 2022 when they did play more man defense than they did zone. So I don't know that this is my question to you, because normally you and I are on the same page with this. It's ridiculous to think that a team is hiding things in the playbook to a large extent. But I'm having to ask myself that question if that's the case, because this looks nothing like what Tom Allen did at Indiana, or for the last decade that I watched those defenses.
Yeah, I struggle with that a little. I have a hard time buying that outright, that they're just going to wait until, because I watched your post game show, like the notion that they're going to go to LA on October 12th and just be a radically transformed defense that just, I struggle with that.
I don't think this is a great plan. Okay, so let me just say that then. If this is the defense you want to play, I don't think that's a great plan, because it's, as we saw, it's predictable. The way to beat it is clear, and it's not like it's, oh no, there's this blueprint. Everybody knows how to beat that particular defense. So when you go up against better teams that are going to force you into third and short more often because they are equally talented, you're going to get those situations that happen all the time.
I have a question for you though, and this is where to me that the last quarter of football, it stood out to me, isn't there a give and take proposition at stake here of Penn State trying to get itself into situations for defensive splash plays effectively, and then having those splash plays pay off, right? Like you're working defensively to get your guys who have a knack for, you are willing to concede certain things, right? Including moving the ball. Like, West Virginia moved the ball. Like, we got to stop acting like West Virginia didn't have success offensively. They did.
Yeah.
They moved the ball not to the 20s, right? They moved the ball between the 20s. And then when they got there, Penn State clamped down. On Saturday, I saw Zachy Wheatley have an interception, right? Based on a bad throw that was based on pressure. Am I wrong?
No, that's correct. That is correct.
I saw now Tony Rojas's play was him just being spectacular, I think.
Yes. I mean, this is where I'm talking about. They played cover 2, which is like, for this defense so far this year, that was the difference. You know, to just lay it out is in the second half, instead of playing just cover 1 and cover 3, they mixed in shockingly basic cover 2, where he's the linebacker covering that part of the field, and he's just excellent. He didn't bite on what the offense is trying to make him do, and he undercut the route from a receiver who runs a 4.4 to get an interception. So that's him being elite in a base, again, another standard, non-difficult to read sort of coverage for the quarterback.
Yeah.
So let's move on.
I guess at the end of the season, and again, like, this is where your technical perspective helps me, but am I wrong to think that Penn State defensively is stressing and maximizing the opportunity for interceptions?
I would not say, that's my point, is I would say no, they are not. What they're trying to do is, from what I can see, stuff the run by adding an extra hat to the box regularly, third and long, and then maybe do those things. The whole point of Tom Allen was he did it on first down. He would do some of these things early in the down to try and maximize interceptions. What they're doing is they're trying to maximize third and long. And so, to me, those are two different. And I know that Tom Allen was trying to stop the run at Indiana. That's if we paint these in black and white terms, you're going to be wrong about this. But generally, in the margins, the philosophy, the little differences that I find so interesting is he was doing some of these complex coverage rotations and some of these hidden things within the defense to confuse the quarterback on first and second down, not just on third down. Manny Diaz sold out to get into those third downs to maximize interceptions. The whole thing about Tom Allen was it's coverage first in my mind, as opposed to front seven pressure first. And to me, that's the disconnect here of what I was expecting and what we're getting. Cover one, man coverage, is not necessarily the time to get interceptions because your back is to the football. You have to be very good. Tony was in zone coverage at that point when he got that interception. Zachy Wheatley was in a zone coverage on that overthrow. That's where you get interceptions more often than you beat your man so bad on his route, you get an interception in man coverage because your back is to the football. Penn State typically plays the man, not the ball. In these situations, as we've seen over time, because it's very hard to play the ball in flight.
Wasn't your off-season question overarching that Tom Allen with improved players wouldn't need to take the risks that he did at Indiana.
And I guess but also retain the creativity that made that defense so hard to play. And right now, the creativity is not present.
Gotcha.
And so that's the point. I guess that's the disconnect in my mind, is I'm not seeing the things that I thought made that defense special. And that was my question of, can they retain the defensive creativity the way they have the offensive creativity with Andy Kotelnicki? And right now, they're playing simple, and what they're trying to do is play simple and dominate with talent. And again, this is oversimplifying everything, because they are starting in 2 high coverages and then rotating safeties down, but that is kind of the standard sort of fake. It's a Halloween costume as opposed to you went to art and studio and got like a full done up thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, you go into Comic-Con and you got the full costume, like the full Iron Man suit, as opposed to the one you buy from Halloween Spirits. That's the difference here. Is I have not seen anything that puts it on that level. And On Final Approach says Allen had to do that because he had to take more shots. Yes and no. Yes and no. There were some weaknesses in those teams, but if you have a front 7 like Penn State, I feel like you could do both. That's the both I would expect.
So you're saying that Franklin is meddling in the defense?
No. I don't know.
I'm kidding.
I don't know. Yeah, but like, I'm looking at that question, or I'm looking at that thought and being like, I don't know if meddle's the right word, but I'm just saying, that's why I'm asking, are they saving stuff? Because I'm not seeing any of the things I expected. I'm not seeing a hint of any of the things I expected. The one thing I've seen is on third down, they play something similar to what they did at Indiana, because Tom Allen loves one specific coverage on third down, and I've seen them do it once, essentially, in 2 games.
Is there a world where the sample size is so small and the opponents are not complex enough to think that they thought that was a winning game plan?
Yes. So that's the way to beat West Virginia was to do that, where they could clamp down on those receivers and they could suffocate the run game and take away some of the wrinkles in the West Virginia run game by adding more players into the box. But then it took them a whole half of football to be like, hey, that's not working this week. So to me, it was, we want to play this way. Like, we're specifically doing the same thing again. That's our intention, is to get out of this game with the same game plan. And against a team that likes to run the football, and I guess give credit to Bowling Green for flipping the script and being more aggressive and throwing the ball more. But I guess that is the interesting thing, is like, if you're playing a team that wants to run the football and they run a lot of 12 personnel at Bowling Green, did you feel like it was the best possible decision and then you had to change, or are you trying to not do stuff specifically because you don't want to do it yet? Or is it door number 3 and like, this is the plan? Because James Franklin talked about before the season, we're going to play man coverage. We're going to play more man. We're going to take away the easy access throws, and we're going to get to some more domination style football where it's 3rd and long all the time. Let's get to the mailbag, because a lot of these things are coming up. A lot of these things are in the chat, and I want to get to some of those thoughts today. So let's talk about the offense for a second. And by the way, the good and the bad thing about Nate and I doing the show together, and it's just the 2 of us, this could be a 90-minute show. We could sit here. We both like to get into the details on these things. Losie's Mustache says, how does Penn State not have a single target to the 2 wide receivers that are expected to be wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in Trey Wallace and Liam Clifford this past weekend? So Penn State puts up a lot of points, but it's an imbalanced receiving approach. Losie's Mustache wants to know what you think about that particular situation.
We're
so
I'm sorry,
Trey Wallace and Liam Clifford did not get a catch last week.
Yes.
To be clear, Trey Wallace got a catch that was negated by a penalty, and then he had another target that would have been a long completion that went incomplete because of a broken up play by the defensive back. So Trey Wallace did have 2 critical targets, but Clifford once again did not have a target in this game. So what's up with the sporadic nature of getting the receivers involved.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to go this route right off the bat, but I do think that there is a valid point being made by James Franklin about the lack of plays, like
Yes.
actual plays that they are running, and that is really the entirety of the conversation. They've had again, let me see if my math is correct here. And don't quote me on this, but I think they've had 22 non-garbage time possessions, and I ran the numbers last night. 9 of them, of those 22, have been 5 plays or fewer, and 20 plays, or excuse me, 20 yards gained or fewer. So you're talking about 1 first down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even within those possessions, they just don't have the ball enough to spread the ball around to more players. It's just a lack of quantity. It's not, and I do think that they tried to get the ball to Julian Fleming on Saturday and did once, right? I think that there are some purposeful trying to spread the ball around a little bit, but they just haven't had the ball enough. And I think with Trey Wallace, specifically on Saturday, they had a second primary target, which is Tyler. I mean, Tyler Warren's going to have a ton of catches this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's not like they didn't try to get the ball to Trey Wallace. It's just that it worked out more efficiently and effectively.
Let me ask a follow-up question. If Amari Evans catches one of the 2 passes that went incomplete, the drop or the OPI.
Yep.
And let's aim high here, and let's say that he catches the touchdown without pushing off. And he has like 80 yards on 2 catches and a touchdown, and Drew Aller throws for 275 yards or whatever the final total would be. Are we having this conversation, or are we talking about Amari Evans, breakout player? ? Do you even need Trey Wallace? Or I'm sorry, do you even need Liam Clifford? And how close are these conversations from being turned on their head?
Yeah, again, like kind of back to the earlier point. These are the guys that you want to absolutely get the ball to. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to give Amari Evans a shot at those receptions. And so if something has to give when you have this few of offensive plays, right? And that thing to give is you're just not seeing the ball get to those other guys. But I think that there's a wide misperception of how many receivers you actually need to in terms of piling up numbers, right? If you look back historically, even in some of the most explosive offenses that Penn State has had, the difference between 1 and 2 receivers, right? They're having 50-ish catches a piece, right? Then it's a tight end, then it's a running back, then maybe a third receiver. And then the drop off from 3 below that is significant, right?
Yeah.
You're not gonna have 5 guys with 20 or more catches a piece. It's just not.
Yeah. Part of this is the conversation led by James Franklin, who says they want a 2.5 deep at every position. So they want 6 receivers essentially, or 5 and a guy that can float between positions. And so you have the ideal, and then you have the reality of they need 3 guys to have a balanced threat on the football field. Stephen Light, he has a couple of things here. He says the chat is fire this morning. There are some angry people about a win over Bowling Green in the chat this morning, Nate. He also says, are they going to have to simplify the defense to solve the health issues? Do you think that simplification is the answer for whatever might be going on defense going forward if these are some long-term issues?
I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I mean, I don't get the sense. Certainly, Tony Rojas coming back was right, and certainly KJ Winston was good enough to play for a quarter. So the notion that either of those guys are looking at season-long injuries, I'm not on board with that. And so I made this point at some point in the little cheat sheet that we look at. Penn State to be the team it wants to be has to have its best players. And so like that's the plan. The plan has to be for those guys. If there are situations that come up and you have to go to contingencies, then yeah, that changes things, and that changes what the expectations are, and that change what type of defense and personality you want to have. But I do think that, yeah, if they're going to be the best version of themselves, these are the guys that you gotta do it with, and you're expecting them to be available to you.
Let's go to this question from OC Lion. We have now, I don't know if the term cross the Rubicon is appropriate. I don't actually know what a Rubicon is, but I know we have come full circle in this conversation, Nate. James Franklin mentioned they need to control the ball longer to give the defense more rest during games. That brings up an interesting point. Can a team be too explosive? Nate, no, but
I've finally gotten to the point in my career where everything is deja vu, because this was the conversation in 2016.
Yeah.
You know, can it be too explosive? No, I don't really think so. I think that the explosive plays that Penn State has had and the explosive drives that Penn State has had, scoring touchdown, right? Like you're not telling Nick Singleton, hey man, the defense needs a breather, fall down at the 10-yard line. Right. Yeah. Like, and I'm
somebody honestly suggested to me that Bowling Green allowed him to score so they get the ball back, and Penn State fell for it. I'm like, the fact that they had 12 guys in the box trying to stop that run tells me they were not trying to let him score. Nate, this is about efficiency and not going 3 and out. They had some 3 and outs and some 4 and outs, and just eliminate those. And that's all we're talking about, is you string together more drives of 5 plays for 75 yards and a touchdown, and now you have a perfect offense.
Yep.
Like, this is the problem. We're talking about a team that scored 34 points easily. They could have, if they had not shoved off unnecessarily or gone up and tried to get the football instead of letting it drop into them, they could have had 14 more points and put this game away in a different fashion. Yep. They didn't do those things, and you can't count all your ifs and buts.
You can't.
But to give a Nate Bauer, however, those were reasonable plays to make, as opposed to like, oh, it was barely, like those were on-target passes for 60 yards down the field. So those are reasonable things to say. If those go the other way, we're not having this conversation. 2 kids, 1 wife, all PSU. I'm getting better at saying that name. He says, if we need to respect each team, but Kent State is really bad, what are your expectations of this upcoming game, Nate?
I mean, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. Penn State
we're still in the bye week.
Yeah, Penn State should win. And when you want to talk about Illinois too? I think that Penn State's in I know people don't want to hear it, but like I do think Penn State's in a pretty good place, offensively for sure, and can get back to a pretty good place defensively. And those things should put Penn State in an advantageous position to handle the next opponent. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think that Kent State's not good.
Yeah. But I'm going to say this, and I'm not trying to just confirm my priors. If Penn State's defensive front played like the way it did in the second half, where they allowed like less than 2 yards a run and 89 total yards. If they played like that throughout the game, playing with the same, and I went into detail of what changed in the second half and how the defensive line played differently. If they just play like that from the beginning, again, this is not Penn State is bad. I think Penn State did go into that game expecting to be done at halftime. And
I agree.
Was not the case because Bowling Green was coming to play.
Yeah.
I want to clean this up, Nate, because Duke in the chat, he is not a fan of Penn State football. He likes Penn State football, but based on his feelings and what he has to say, he's not a very optimistic person about this season, but he is super helpful, and I love having him around because he's got this endless bank of knowledge. AG Duke says, Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon. with his army, which was unheard of at the time, led to the Roman Republic, starting the Roman Empire. Thus, the term crossing the Rubicon is used to describe a situation that is unprecedented. Thank you. I knew I was absolutely wrong in using that term, but I did not know where it came from. And now everyone is smarter because of Duke. So thank you very much. What I meant to say is we have come full circle. This is a conversation we've had before about the offense and complaining about one side and then complaining about the other. Let's talk a little more about the offense, Nate. And this one,
Yeah.
I need to clean this up after the post-game show where I was like, yeah, that's a real problem that Drew Shelton is not playing for the final two drives. Navy Blue says, how do you feel about Nolan Rucci at right and left tackle? Giving my concern personally about Drew Shelton and the fact that Rucci got left at left tackle, a sign of the staff's concern. During the game, I can't pick up on all of the things as much as I want to, and then I try to talk about the game in a way that has like some definitiveness. I did not see Rucci play right tackle earlier in the game. He basically played the third and fourth quarter. They just rotated him between the two positions, and to make sure Donko still played, they played him at left tackle during the fourth quarter, so it is not the same situation that I was thinking it was. However, I am still concerned, this is T. Frank, is still concerned about Drew Shelton and his overall play this season, but I do not believe Nolan Rucci is going to be the answer at that position in the future. Nate, what is your observation of that particular situation so far?
Same. Look, we get caught up in these. If Nolan Rucci was the best player for either of those positions, he would have won the starting job. That is it. And so Drew Shelton is the guy that they have the most confidence in at left tackle. Anthony Donko is the guy that they have the most confidence in at right tackle. And I think it's going to stay that way. Rucci being there, I'm not sure that his game is going to exceed the best version of either one of those guys. But if he is there to push them, I think that is enough for an overall net benefit.
Yeah. I think because this question came up, I went back and I watched Rucci's plays in the game. And my feeling after watching some live game reps during meaningful competition is that the highs for Rucci, especially as a run blocker, can be higher than they can for some of the other guys on the offensive line. And I mean that just because he can be a difference maker as a run blocker, regardless of, who we're talking about. I think he's on the same level of a Vega Ioane or an Anthony Donko in terms of his impact plays in the run game are really fun to watch and they're really impressive. But as you said, if he's the best overall player, he would be playing. And that is not the case from where he falls on the net of his positive and negative plays.
Yep.
2 weeks in, Nate, I know generally where this conversation is going, but RD24 wants to know, what's your level of optimism for the rest of the season after the first 2 weeks? And should fans feel confident or worried about the season, and why?
Okay. So, I don't care one way or the other what happens for Penn State's results, but on their behalf, yeah, I think there is more optimism. Look, remember last year when you got to the UMass game, and it was the conversation coming out of that was something's not right, right? In a game that they won easily and by a lot, but it was still something's not right. And then they went to Ohio State, and something's not right turned into something's wrong, right? Like something is wrong. And it showed up again against Michigan. I see, again, broad picture, and defense that's going to take a step back. They're not going to be as stout. They're not going to be as suffocating. They will generate turnovers, I believe. And that will be tremendously helpful for Penn State and this offense. And I see an offense that has the ability. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed that they will continue to do this, but can score points and can do so efficiently and can do so quickly. And James Franklin said it on his radio show last Thursday, and I thought it was extremely applicable, talking about how all of these teams that Penn State plays, especially a team like Bowling Green and a lot of teams that are going to be on schedule for Penn State this season are going to want Penn State and Drew Aller to dink and dunk their way down the field. That is what everybody forced Penn State to do last season. And sometimes, for the most part, Penn State had enough talent that they and enough maturity that they could do that. But he said on Thursday night, it's not realistic to expect that at this level of football. It is not. You just cannot make a living offensively having to produce 12 play drives all the time. You cannot do that.
Iowa. That's my problem with their philosophy.
And but look at Iowa. Iowa's winning percentage is like 10th in the country over the last 10 years. They are a very successful program, and there are a ton of programs that you can do that against and have success. Penn State has crossed that bridge. They are beyond that.
They have crossed that Rubicon.
They have crossed that Rubicon. This is a Penn State program that it has achieved all of that. It has reached
there is a
that
glass ceiling. Yes, there's a glass ceiling on that style of play. Glass ceiling. I don't know if that, again, I'm mixing my metaphors, and it's there. Like, I don't know if glass is, but there's a ceiling. There's a concrete ceiling generally on that style of play. And again, if you want, don't come at me with Michigan last year. Michigan was explosive. They had explosive passes. When they threw the ball, they got chunks, and they got chunks on the ground. Penn State last year was not doing that. Nate, this is my whole thing, because like Mac the Mustard Man and AG Duke, they're not optimistic about this team, but I think that is more of a mindset than the facts that are being presented. And that's, I guess, like, I get bewildered sometimes by the chat. Because, like, are you honestly feeling that way, or do you want to feel that way? And I'm not. This is genuine. What I'm coming away from the first two games is they've got an elite quarterback, and they've got an elite running back, and they've got elite weapons when they're clicking with Tyler Warren, and the choices that they're making on offense to the way they beat these two teams. I'm very optimistic, and on defense, I think there's more to come. Injuries are part of it. And a sleepy first half turned into a dominant second half where guys calmed down and woke up, both simultaneously happening. So through the first 8 quarters of the season, the ingredients to make an explosive offense that can do all the things you want are there. And the quarterback thing was the number one thing we talked about coming into this season. And it's the best thing about the team at this point is Drew Aller is dealing on third down. He's dealing deep. He's accurate for the most part. We're allowing him to make some mistakes this year, and he's killing it. And yet, I don't understand why none of that is making fans excited. I mean, I'm excited.
Last year, everyone came out of that West Virginia game and saw that pass to Keandre that was behind him, but went for 72 yards and a touchdown, and they were like, this is it. This is the guy. And then they didn't see him again the rest of the season. I've seen that guy exponentially better over the last 2 weeks, even when it hasn't worked out. They had a bunch of plays. That pass to Katron Allen, that Katron drop, and like it's a tough play, but that drop was an exceptionally good pass. That was like him moving around in the pocket, escaping the pocket, prolonging plays, making plays with his feet. This is the Drew Aller that everyone begged for, and he's doing it. And it's game-changing. These are all of the things that everyone wanted to see, and Drew Aller's doing it. And guess what? Not only is he doing it, but Nick Singleton's doing it alongside him. And when you have two guys doing that, when you have Trey Wallace making the plays that he made at West Virginia, does he have to do it more consistently? Absolutely. He's got He's got to be able to show up all the time. Omari Evans is getting better. Omari Evans is a threat. We talked about that before the season. This is what Penn State needs, is for Omari Evans to hit. They needed Omari Evans to hit more than they needed Liam Clifford to hit, more than they needed Julian Fleming to hit, more than they need Caden Saunders to hit. They need Omari Evans to hit. And so if he keeps doing that and getting open and making plays on the ball downfield, it changes the dynamic of the offense. Tyler Warren being the showstopper tight end, not having to share the stage. Chuck Losey talked about it in June, about him having the opportunity to be the best that Penn State has ever had at the position. There is a reason for that. These guys are super good, and Penn State is finally also has a coordinator at the same time that can put those guys in the best position to succeed. So when you have that and they're all clicking at the same time, and even when they're not all clicking at the same time, if you've got 3 out of 5 of those going on the same day, you're going to be very, very happy about where Penn State stands at the end of the day.
And so I want to answer this final question because it ties in. Our weekly staff meeting is going to have to wait a couple minutes because I'm not done. Drew and his decision making. Is it fair to say that 2024 Drew is scrambling in instances where 2023 Drew Aller might have thrown it away? He definitely ran some last year, but it feels like he's making a point of making plays with his legs this year. He says, love the show. G. Martinez, you bring up a good point, and I also want to go into the decision-making process of when to run, when to throw, when to scramble, and this is all happening because pressure is getting to him, and he is not falling apart. So that's all that Nate, when you and I were talking about this offseason, that's what I said. That's the whole ball game this year. If he fixes the mental side, he's going to be a draftable quarterback. He's going to be everything that everybody wants him to be. And this is the last thing I want to say. Mac, Duke, the fans that are negative and concerned and like have the scars of years past. I get it. I'm not saying they're going to win a national championship this year. I'm not saying they're going to the Big Ten championship. I'm saying that what I've seen so far is the offense and the situation that gets you, the door is open. Like the door is open. Whether they walk through it or not is to be determined. You could be right. Like in the end, you could be absolutely right and you can have a victory parade in the chat and that, but it's the fact that they're doing the things that are indicative of a higher level of success and competing at a higher level. It's 2 weeks of the season, and we'll see what happens on the other side. But I would be optimistic if I'm a fan. I would be brave and know that you could still fail, but that's what bravery is having hope in the face of adversity. Nate, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that if Penn State loses 37-36 to Ohio State this year, that will have been progress. All right. But they have a chance. That's to me, this is the very clear difference between last year and this year is you cannot just have one side of the ball that's really, really good, awesome, and then hope that you can scrounge through on the other side of the ball to get there. I think, look, if Penn State has a top 20 offense or defense, this year, but makes a ton of plays but finishes statistically right in not at number 1 overall in total yards allowed, not number 1 in rushing yards allowed, but finishes top 20, but has a top 20 legitimate, not just a scoring offense, but a scoring offense that is efficient and explosive and smooth. If Penn State can have those together at the same time, they're going to give themselves a chance to win every game that they play. That's all you are asking for. That is where this program is. And giving yourself that opportunity, you take your shot. You take your shot and you see what happens. And that's what we're going to see over the next couple of months.
Nate, I love you. I love everybody in the chat. Thanks for this show today. I feel good about where we ended today. Our next therapy session starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. Greg and I are going to be talking about things. We might mix the show up a little bit, but we'll see what's coming up. We're definitely talking an hour of Penn State football tomorrow. What's up, Nate?
I am sitting, just so everyone knows, in saltwater taffy that my kids apparently left on the chair, and I didn't realize it until halfway through the show, and I couldn't move. So I want you guys to know I did this for you. My shorts are covered in saltwater taffy.
Oh, all right, that is the best note to get out of here on. We'll talk to you tomorrow.